And strangers in the night, exchanging glances, wandering in the night. What were the chances we'd be sharing love? A little light was such a beautiful song. So many memories. And as long as you have a song as popular as Strangers in the Night, you can just go to YouTube and read all these stories and comments. Like, people use it for dancing, people use it for funerals, for weddings, for birthdays, for anything, and just you can imagine. Yes, it's a big hit, and it's a huge hit for Frank Sinatra. Not his most famous song, but one of them for sure. And it's actually had it's like a time machine, and it gets me back to my memories, because it gets me back to the mid 19s when I was 5 or 6 years old, and we traveled with our family to Crimea, which is now occupied by Russia, of course, but back then it was Ukraine, and we traveled from my hometown, St. Petersburg, to Crimea. And my mom actually recorded a mixtape on a cassette with all these brilliant mid 19s or late 80s songs, and we had things like Sweet Harmony by Beloved, or Sunshine Reggae by Laid Back, or I Just Called to Say I Love You, and I don't know, Blessed by Elton John. All these 19s and 80s hits. And among them was the song Strangers in the Night by Frank Sinatra. And the inspiration for this video actually comes from one of the Glenn Campbell's interview, because the song was recorded on 11th of April of 1966, and the group that recorded it is called the Wrecking Crew, and part of the Wrecking Crew was Glenn Campbell, which is this famous great guitar player and singer. And that's actually something that upsets me, is that you can actually find a chart of musicians that were employed to play on the record. And the funny thing is that they actually used 4 guitar players. Not only 4 guitar players, but 4 world-class guitar players in this song, which is funny because you can barely hear the guitar in this song. And this is something that always fascinated me. Whenever Wrecking Crew is recording something, they employ 10 piano players, 12 bass players, 5 guitar players, and so on. I just maybe they tried some different configurations, and that I can understand them in the sense that you can try as many things as possible. And so, but again, that famous interview of Glenn Campbell, he's probably the most vocal from the Wrecking Crew to actually talk about recording Strangers in the Night, because he had a funny story to share, basically, where he stared at Frank Sinatra for a little bit too much, overstared it, and Frank basically thought that he's homosexual or something. But it's a funny story. It's just so much fun just watching Glenn Campbell's interviews and stuff. But what fascinated me is that in that particular interview, he said basically that he's a capo king, and he used capo everywhere in his session work. And he tried to play this Strangers in the Night with the capo on the 5th fret in C position. And he played. And I thought, well, I never thought to actually learn it. I just thought it's a session musician sharing his work with a famous star. That happens all the time. No, not a big deal. But then one day I just thought, well, I might as well just learn this tune, because it's such a beautiful song and such an important song. Because I just said it's a time machine that gets me back to my childhood. And I tried to learn it. And you know what? It just didn't work for me. I just can't possibly play this song in this configuration. It just doesn't work for me, and I went for a hunt just to get as much information as I can, and I actually found 5 or 6 interviews of Glenn Campbell just talking about recording with Frank Sinatra. And it's incredibly confusing because it goes all over the place. So in one interview he again played with the capo on the 5th fret, he played it in this C position. In other interview he played it in G position without a capo or something like that. And in another interview he said that he played it in E flat. So he said I played Strangers in the Night in the C position with the capo in E flat, and it makes no sense because the song is in F. Everybody knows that, and it's incredibly confusing, I must admit. And so I thought that I have to deal with it somehow, and I went for a hunt basically. And so what happened is that Glenn confused his own thoughts, because in one interview he said that he was a capo king, but he said that it allows him to play in E flat. What it means is that E flat is a hard key to play on a guitar because it's basically below the lowest possible note on the instrument, and so it's not the most convenient key to play in for guitar players. And what he meant is that if you put a capo on the 3rd fret, you can actually play in E flat. And not only that, you can play in E flat using one of the simplest C chord shapes. And so that's I think where the confusion comes from. So he remembers recording Strangers in the Night with the capo, but he confuses this with the story about using it to play in E flat, and that's where confusion is coming from. So playing in C shape in E flat with the capo, because again I can't possibly make this song work. And then I tried to learn it in the C position. I realized that there is a modulation towards the end of the song, because it modulates from F major to G. And if you try to play it in G with the capo in the 5th position, it becomes this D shape. And I thought that it's much nicer to actually play it in D. And so I tried to play it in D major with the capo on the 3rd fret, which makes it again the original key of the record, which is F. And suddenly the song just clicked for me, because I tried to play it in F without the capo. I tried to play it with the capo on the 5th fret, and it just doesn't work for me. But then the song suddenly clicked for me, because everything the song played itself. And also, in yet another interview, Glenn said that he played again Strangers in the Night in C position, in E flat again, which is not true, in E flat in the C position, using what he called, quote, 12-string open chords, which is again pretty strange and confusing, because if you try to learn this song again in the C shape, it's kind of too hard to play. And the thing with session playing and the thing with playing songs in general, especially on my channel is all about rhythm guitar, and I can't play a song when I'm not satisfied with the way it sounds, because I need this kind of sensation of this, then the song just clicks and I get it. Then I try to play it with the capo on the 3rd fret, and so I'll go through the song, through the chords, and you'll see what I'm talking about. So for the intro, it's a 3-chord intro. I play basically D major. Also, sometimes you can hit the A bass here with this kind of da dan 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 strumming. Going to D major 7. And for the 3rd chord, what I use is this, basically open strings from 5th to the 1st, which makes it kind of a G over A, I believe, this G6 over A, but again this kind of a suspended sound, which is funny because it actually reminds me of Glenn Campbell's most famous tune, which is I am the lineman of the county. But anyway, it's or it can be just A7. Also works beautifully. And so the verse goes, strangers in the night, D major 7, to this D6 with an open 2nd string, which is a typical cliche, major cliche. That's why I believe the song was sued by one of the other songwriters. The song also basically used the same cliche, but he actually lost because again it's a cliche and everybody uses it, so it's not a big deal. But then what this configuration allows me to do is actually to do this huge jump, because it jumps from D to this chord, to this G minor, or E minor with the capo. So it allows me to do this huge jump between this D6, F sharp in the bass, F with this diminished chord, again something I can't possibly play in the C position, but here it works beautifully. Just and I love how on the record it's a beautiful double bass. It's just so, an arrangement, I will talk about the arrangement later, but it's just so beautiful. It even allows me to play this little, I don't know, James Bond cliche. And here I just stay on E minor because I think the melody is strong enough to support this E minor 7 feel, and then I'm using again this open strings chord to give this sort of a lifting effect. So it's going to A7. And it allows me to play this again. Little melody around the D major 7. So this minor part of the verse again, it's staying on E minor, and then with this huge crescendo going to the chorus, which is probably my favorite part of the song, because it has some really strong chords in it. For instance, the first one is your typical F sharp minor 7 flat 5, half diminished, and you can think of it as A minor with F sharp in the bass, basically. Then one note changes it to F sharp diminished. To E minor. And this beautiful G minor 6. And it's pretty remarkable what they're able to achieve by using just like a small version of an orchestra. It's just string section, flutes, guitar, double bass, and French horns. And French horns probably my favorite part here because it emphasizes this going to minor. So it's French horns. And to a simple pop turnaround. D major with A in the bass, B minor, E minor, A7. Going back to the song, just beautiful, and it actually is true to Glenn Campbell's words about open 12-string chord, because you can't get any more simple than that. Which brings me to the final bit I wanted to discuss, is that Frank Sinatra actually hated this song. It's a well-known fact, and you can actually find live performances where he straight up says that he hates this song. And I don't know, I take these words with a grain of salt, and I think, for one thing, that Frank Sinatra's song My Way is way cheesier than... If the cheesiness of Strangers in the Night is thing that Frank hated about this song, I think My Way is cheesier than Strangers in the Night. Because it's just, I did it my way. It's incredibly pretentious and cheesy in that regard, and it's even more popular. I know a lot of artists hate their most famous pieces, but I don't know. Strangers in the Night is a simple Strangers in the Night. It's a simple love story, basically, and I don't know what to hate in this song. Love stories are cheesy by design, and it was true back from the Shakespeare days, from Romeo and Juliet, all the way to basically the modern times. And it reminds me, like James Cameron, the director of the movie Titanic, he said that Titanic is basically Romeo and Juliet on Titanic. And again, it's a simple love story, and love stories are cheesy by design, so you can't escape that. And songs like that, they popular for the reason, because it's a simple, everybody can relate to that, and I certainly can relate to that. And again, I said about that this song is basically a time machine that gets me back to my childhood, and I don't know, I just parted with my wife. She went back to home, and I'm staying here in Turkey, and this 2,000 or 3,000 kilometers. Again, love is the most important part about it all, and I think just hating the song just because it's a silly love song, I think it's not a good idea. And I hope you liked my little version and my little investigation into this little tune, because I certainly had a lot of fun digging into that. And tell me if there's other rhythm guitar songs, rhythm guitar tracks you want me to discuss, because it's too much fun. And see you in the next one.